Monster Hunter has always done crossovers with other franchises and has always featured many other intellectual properties in their games. It's not as big as something like Smash Brothers, but it's a cool celebration of gaming in general. Seriously, all kinds of franchises have collaborated with Monster Hunter in the past. And now with Monster Hunter World, things are even bigger and greater than ever. Just take a look at the Final Fantasy XIV collaboration or The Witcher 3 collaboration with Monster Hunter World. Both collaborations introduced an entire questline and brand new monsters to the game. And in the case of the Final Fantasy collaboration, you would have a lot of nods to the franchise, such as having cactuars and Muggles, as well as all of the text fonts being replaced with the font that is used in Final Fantasy XIV, and the music that played in the background was Final Fantasy XIV music. And in a similar way, The Witcher 3 crossover saw us players getting into the role of Geralt of Rivia, the main character in The Witcher 3, and you would have to solve a mystery, talk to different NPCs and ask them different questions. It was an authentic RPG experience that we have never had before in Monster Hunter World. So now the expectation for future crossovers and collaborations are bigger than ever. And as such, I figured it would be a lot of fun to talk about different franchises and how they could cross over with Monster Hunter World once the Iceborne expansion is released. So with that being said, hello hunters, my name is DarkHero, welcome back to my channel where we cover Monster Hunter content. I am so glad you are here, and today we are going to be covering my wish list for the top 10 collaborations that I would like to see being introduced in Monster Hunter World Iceborne. But before we do so, if you are new around here, I am doing a giveaway for having reached 40,000 subscribers on YouTube. And if you want to participate in the giveaway, all you need to do is subscribe to the channel and go to the link in the description. With that being said, let's get started. In the number 10 spot we have Goblin Slayer. This pick may certainly raise some eyebrows, as in case you didn't know, Goblin Slayer is an anime that tackles some, let's say, not safe for work topics. It's not a very light-hearted anime, in fact it is quite brute and grotesque, and it has a very dark atmosphere for most of the anime. But given the fantasy setting, and given that the main character, the Goblin Slayer, has an armor set that would fit perfectly into Monster Hunter and also uses a sword and shield that could be introduced as a weapon, I think that it would fit very well as a crossover with Monster Hunter. They could even make it so that the event quest where you get the Goblin Slayer armor and weapon would be one where you have to fight up against a horde of Gajalakas, which would of course symbolize the goblins from the Goblin Slayer anime. Now the biggest problem that I see in regards to this collaboration, besides the licensing issues, is the fact that Goblin Slayer is pretty mature in itself and Monster Hunter is a bit more geared towards teenagers and young adults. There is violence, but it's not excessive, there isn't gore, it's not too brutal at the end of the day. And Goblin Slayer is precisely that, so this one is most likely not going to happen, but I thought it was a good idea, so I decided to add it to the list. Moving on from there, in the number 9 spot we have Attack on Titan. This crossover is, I think, a little bit more believable, and the reason for that is that there was actually an Attack on Titan collaboration in the past with Monster Hunter. It just wasn't Monster Hunter World, but it was a Japan exclusive game titled Monster Hunter Explore. The crossover that is present in this mobile game features the Survey Corps outfit that the characters wear in the series, as well as the ODM gear that serve as dual blades. But not only that, but this collaboration also features a very unique Deviljho that takes on the appearance of the Colossal Titan. This Deviljho is titled the Aberrant Deviljho and releases a lot of steam just like the Colossal Titan. It's a fantastic collaboration, and with a new season of Attack on Titan, the final season of the anime in fact coming next year, I think it would work very well if Monster Hunter World were to do a collaboration with Attack on Titan in a similar vein to what they did with Monster Hunter Explore. maybe they could have other monsters taking on the appearance of other different titans. They did something very similar again with Monster Hunter Explorer, where they had a crossover with Neon Genesis Evangelion, and many monsters would take on the appearance of the different angels that appear in the series. One such example is the Evangelion Gormagala that takes on the appearance of the 10th angel present in Evangelion 2.0, which is called Zeruel. Again, the biggest issue for this type of crossover would be the licensing issues, but given that Attack on Titan has already collaborated with Monster Hunter, I think that this would be much more likely to happen. In the number 8 spot of our list, we have yet another anime series, which this time is Berserk. Much like with Goblin Slayer, Berserk is a very dark and mature type of series, which is why I don't see this happening, but if it were to happen, it could very easily be just giving us the Berserk armor set as well as Berserk's iconic weapon as a greatsword. As for enemies, I'm not sure what type of enemy that could be featured from Berserk in Monster Hunter and represented as a monster, but given that it is a fantasy series, they could pull off from a variety of creatures, just like we saw with the Witcher 3 collaboration, which gave us the Ancient Lesson. And now in the number 7 spot we have Final Fantasy. Yes, we already have a Final Fantasy collaboration in Monster Hunter World, but there's a lot more that they could do. The Final Fantasy VII Remake is coming out next year, and a collaboration with such game could feature Cloud's soldier outfit as well as the Buster Sword as a greatsword. They could even go a step further and give us Tifa's outfit or Aerith's outfit, or maybe even Sephiroth's outfit with a longsword, which would be Sephiroth's iconic sword. Just based on characters alone, there's a lot that they could do, and we do know that Square Enix is in good relationships with Capcom, so there is a possibility for this happening. And for monsters, there is a lot of monsters that they could pull from the Final Fantasy franchise. One of which would be the very iconic Bahamut, that is this sort of giant dragon that can bring the calamity to the world, and I think it would fit very well in Monster Hunter. And if they were not to go with Final Fantasy VII, maybe because the remake is coming out next year, they could do yet another collaboration with Final Fantasy XIV, given that the Shadowbringers expansion has just released. And if that were to happen, they could feature the Warrior of Darkness armor set for us hunters to have, and they could give us one of the raid bosses from Shadowbringers as a monster that we would have to take on in Monster Hunter World. But again, I don't see this being too likely because we have already had a very big collaboration with Final Fantasy XIV, which is why it isn't any higher on the list. Next up, in the number 6 spot of the list we have God of War. The PlayStation 4 exclusive God of War was a tremendous success. It was a big departure from what God of War typically was, and they still pulled it off in a fantastic way. If we were to get an actual collaboration with God of War, I think that we would be able to see our hunters getting some sort of layered armor set that would make our character look like Kratos, just like we can make our character look like Ryu from the Street Fighter V collaboration. They could also add Kratos' axe and shield, which he uses a lot, especially at the beginning of the game, as a sword and shield. Or they could also add Kratos' iconic weapon, the chain blades, as dual blades. Although of course, if we were to get those dual blades, we wouldn't be able to use the chain part of the chain blades. But the developers could go ahead and change the way that the clutch claw looks like when you have the chain blades equipped, so that they would take on the appearance of Kratos' weapons and would be more in line with the God of War collaboration. Now, a big problem that I see about this collaboration is that it would have to be a PlayStation 4 exclusive, just like the Horizon Zero Dawn collaboration that is currently present in Monster Hunter World. And for that reason, it doesn't rank any higher on the list. Now, for the number 5 spot on the list, we have Persona 5. Persona 5 is without a doubt one of the biggest JRPGs of all time. And Atlas, the developers behind Persona 5, are owned by Sega, which I think is in good relations with Capcom, given that Monster Hunter Frontier had a collaboration with Phantasy Star Online, so there may be a chance of this happening. But let's suppose that we actually do get a collaboration between Persona 5 and Monster Hunter World. How would it work? Well, the most obvious thing would be to have Morgana as your Palico armor set. That would be very cool, and to add extra flair they can make it so that your Palico would say a few lines which would be voiced by Morgana's voice actress. They could also give us Joker's outfit for our characters to wear, and for weapons I'm not really sure what they could pull from the Persona 5 game. Maybe they could give us dual blades because Joker does use a dagger, but he only uses one of them, so I'm not really sure how that would work. Or alternatively, they could change the clutch claw to make it look like the grappling hook that Joker uses in Smash Bros. Ultimate and is going to use in Persona 5 The Royal. Persona 5 is one of the most beloved games to have come out in recent memory, and as such I think that it would be absolutely incredible to see a crossover between Persona 5 and Monster Hunter World. But moving on from there, the fourth spot on the list is none other than Devil May Cry 5. And yes, we already do have a collaboration between Devil May Cry and Monster Hunter World, but it doesn't feature characters from Devil May Cry other than Dante. And as you know, Devil May Cry 5 features a lot more characters than just Dante, and even places more focus on Nero than Dante himself. So what I think would be an awesome idea, and they could very well do this because Devil May Cry and Monster Hunter are all owned by Capcom, would be to give us different things from different playable characters. So you would have Nero's armor set and maybe a sword and shield, where the shield would be the arm that Nero uses and the sword would be his iconic sword, and if the developers were to take it a step further, they could change the clutch claw to make it so that it looks like one of Nero's detachable arms that he uses in the game as a grappling hook. They could also give us Dante's armor set or a layered set to make us look like Dante, the one that is present in Devil May Cry 5, and also give us Dante's big ass sword as the great sword. And for V, they could give us V's armor set, and V's cane would be an insect glaive, and on top of that, Griffin, which is one of the 3 demons that V controls, could be the kinsect that you'd use with the insect glaive. And to make this collaboration even more impressive, they could add Virgil and his armor set, and also add his weapon as a longsword. Chances of this happening exactly this way are very minimal. After all, I'm talking about 4 different characters as different armor sets with different weapons. But again, this is all owned by Capcom, so they do have the license for that. But also because they have already done a Devil May Cry collaboration, this is even less likely to happen. For the number 3 spot is Dragon's Dogma. I am aware that Dragon's Dogma came out in 2012 and we haven't had another game since then except for Dragon's Dogma Online, which was only available in Japan and is shutting down. But they are working on a Dragon's Dogma Netflix series, and there are many rumors of an upcoming sequel. On top of that, the game was just released for the Nintendo Switch, and I would argue that Dragon's Dogma is now more popular than ever. Myself, I have been playing the game a ton recently, and I am close to getting to 100 hours in that game. It is an absolute gem, but there are many things that they could incorporate from that game over to Monster Hunter World. I'm not really sure if they were to feature an armor set or a weapon, because there isn't really a properly iconic armor set or weapon in Dragon's Dogma, but what they could feature is the dragon that you face off against in Dragon's Dogma. In terms of this being possible, I think that it wouldn't take a lot of trouble to make this happen, because they already have skeletons for flying wyverns in the game, and they could just use that to make the dragon from Dragon's Dogma, although they would have to make some new animations for some of the spells that the dragon casts by raising one of his hands. And I think that this collaboration would be even more fitting than ever because of the introduction of the Clutch Claw. In Dragon's Dogma there is this mechanic where you can grapple onto monsters and literally climb up monsters and attack them while you are climbing them. I have never seen any other game doing this, and it's such an awesome mechanic, and now with the introduction of the Clutch Claw you kind of get that feel and are at least able to grapple onto monsters even if they are flying in the air. It may not be the same experience that you have in Dragon's Dogma, but it is similar enough to make it so that it would be an actual thing in Monster Hunter World. And again, both properties are owned by Capcom, so there are no licensing issues for this type of crossover to actually happen. And if we are to actually get a Dragon's Dogma sequel, this could be the perfect way to market that. But at this point, who knows what's really going to happen with the Dragon's Dogma franchise. In the number 2 spot we have Dark Souls, or should I say, From Software. Let me explain. I was going to initially just put Dark Souls in here, especially because there are a ton of weapons and armor sets that would work very well in Monster Hunter, such as Solaire's armor set, Artorias' armor set, as well as his weapon, which could be a longsword or a greatsword. You could have Ornstein's armor set and his weapon, which could be an insect glaive, or you could have the iconic Moonlight greatsword as a greatsword in itself. But the thing is that the last Dark Souls game came out a long time ago, and these types of crossovers are to typically promote the different games. So as much as I would love to see a Dark Souls collaboration, I don't think that such a thing is in the cards for us. And the same thing would apply to a Bloodborne collaboration. There are many cool armor sets and weapons especially that would work well introduced in Monster Hunter. Just think of the many trick weapons that could work as a charge blade or a switch axe in Monster Hunter World. They would even have the same gimmick as they have in Bloodborne. But again, Bloodborne came out a very long time ago, so I don't think that's going to be likely. But what about Sekiro? That is the most recent game from Software. They could certainly do something with that. They could give us Sekiro's armor set and maybe use the prosthetic arm as a weapon in itself, or to change the Clutch Claw and how it looks. This would work especially well with this collaboration because that is a gimmick from Sekiro that is used a ton when you play the game. But I'm not sure if they would decide to go with Sekiro because the game came out a while ago, and I'm not sure if many people will be playing Sekiro by the time Iceborne comes out. So my next option would be Elden Ring, the new From Software game that was just announced at E3. We still don't know much about that game, so I can't really speculate on what they could give us if we were to actually get a crossover. But given that it's a From Software game, it is bound to have some cool looking armor sets and weapons, and some creepy looking monsters, and anything that From Software makes could very well be implemented into Monster Hunter, and I think fans would be pleased. Maybe just tone down the difficulty a bit if we were to get a monster from Software games, because I'm sure some players wouldn't be too pleased with such difficulty. Alright, and the final crossover that I think would work very well in Monster Hunter World and that I would like to see would be with Nier Automata. And quite really there is a lot that they could do here. They could give us B2's armor set and give us a longsword as her weapon or a greatsword because she does use those weapons. They could also give us 9S's armor set, and they could make it so that the event quest where you get these things would have you fighting against those small robots that are present in the game. And if this sounds familiar to you, it's because there is an actual crossover between Monster Hunter and Nier Automata. That is present in Monster Hunter Frontier, the Japanese exclusive game that is being shut down this year. However, given that such a crossover was possible, even if it was with Monster Hunter Frontier, makes me believe that it would be possible for such a thing to happen with World. Not only that, but it seems that Nier Automata is all over the place with crossovers and collaborations. Nier Automata is also going to be present and featured very heavily in a Final Fantasy XIV raid that is going to be released later this year, I believe. And there is also a crossover between Gravity Rush 2 and Nier Automata. And to top it all off, there is a lot of fan demand. Many months ago, I think it was maybe 9 months ago or so, I made this poll where I asked you guys and the community which other franchises would you like to see featured in Monster Hunter World as part of a collaboration. And the one that won by a landslide was none other than Nier Automata. And remember, this was a poll that got thousands of entries. And not only that, but if you take a look at Monster Hunter World mods, some of the most popular mods that are available for you to download are Nier Automata mods. That is for a good reason, that's what the fans want. So given that there has been a Monster Hunter crossover with Nier Automata, and that there is all of this fan demand, I think it's just to say that this is the most wanted collaboration for Monster Hunter World. But we will have to wait and see if we do actually get this or any of the other collaborations that I mentioned in this video. Most likely the answer will be no, but whatever Capcom comes up with, I'm sure I'm going to love it. I mean, I was entirely blown away by what we got in Monster Hunter World, so I cannot wait to see what we get once Iceborne releases. But until then, if you have enjoyed this video, then consider leaving a like as it helps me out a lot. Subscribe if you are new to the channel and turn on channel notifications if you don't want to miss an ounce of Monster Hunter goodness. And as always, a big thank you goes out to my patrons for choosing to support me and helping me do what I love. Especially John Cohen for being a mighty hero. If you would like to support me, the link to my Patreon is down below in the description, but with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. My name is DarkHero, and happy hunting!